Welcome everyone to this deep dive into one of the most fascinating and extraordinary treasures of American numismatics, a story that captures the imagination of collectors and treasure hunters alike. The 1975 1-cent coin, a simple penny minted in Denver that under normal circumstances would be worth just a fraction of a dollar, but due to its rare mistakes, errors, and anomalies, has become valued at a staggering $5 million, and today we will explore why such a coin, which millions of people pass through their hands without ever realizing its true potential, is considered so valuable and so legendary in the coin collecting community. Because when we talk about rare coins, we're not just talking about metal, we're talking about history, about human error, about chance and circumstance, about rarity, and about the incredible thrill of discovering something so unique that it transcends its face value and becomes a multimillion-dollar artifact of modern history. And in this case, the 1975 penny is a perfect example of how small minting mistakes can turn a humble coin into a priceless treasure, because this particular penny is not only tied to its year and mintmark but also to a combination of fascinating mint errors that have captured the attention of numismatists and wealthy collectors around the world. And so let's unravel what makes this 1-cent coin a coin most people would overlook or toss into a jar, worth $5 million, and why the stories surrounding its errors, mistakes, and peculiarities make it such a magnet for fascination and treasure hunting excitement. And first we must consider the context of 1975, when the Denver Mint was producing billions of pennies made mostly of copper alloy, coins that were used daily without a second thought. But amidst this massive production run, a few pieces were struck with errors so unusual and so spectacular that they set themselves apart, beginning with double die obverse errors, where the details on Lincoln's portrait, the motto "In God We Trust," the word liberty, and the date 1975 itself appear doubled or distorted due to misalignment in the die preparation process. And collectors prize these double die examples not only because of their visual appeal but also because such errors are extremely rare and valuable, with some examples of earlier double die pennies, like the 1955 or the 1969s, already commanding thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when a double die is found on a 1975 penny, especially one that is sharp and dramatic, it elevates the coin to a completely different level. And then we have off-center strikes, where the coin is not struck perfectly within the collar but instead has part of its design missing and a large blank space, a mistake that immediately sets the coin apart. And in the case of the 1975 penny, off-center strikes combined with full visible dates and mintmarks create errors that collectors absolutely love. And when paired with other errors like broad strikes or multiple strikes, the rarity multiplies. And then there are transitional errors, because in the 1970s the US Mint was experimenting with compositions, eventually leading to the shift in 1982 from mostly copper to copper-plated zinc. And occasionally experimental planchets or mistakes in feeding blank copper alloys into presses produced coins that should not exist, so a 1975 penny struck on a foreign planchet, or on the wrong metal, instantly becomes a multimillion-dollar rarity. And then there are repunched mintmarks, known as RPMs, which occur when the mintmark was hand-punched more than once into the die, creating doubling, tripling, or distortion that fascinates collectors, because each variation is unique and can command extraordinary premiums. And beyond those errors, there are even more spectacular possibilities, such as die cracks, die cuts, and struck-through errors, where foreign materials like cloth, grease, or metal shavings were caught between the die and planchet during striking, leaving behind ghostly impressions that no other coin carries. And imagine holding a 1975 penny where Lincoln's face is partially obscured by a struck-through piece of wire, or where the reverse memorial building appears distorted by grease-filled dies, instantly transforming it into a rare one-of-a-kind collectible. And when such unique mistakes are paired with exceptional preservation, graded by professional services at the highest levels like MS-67 or MS-68 red, the value explodes, because high-grade copper coins from the 1970s are notoriously hard to find due to natural tarnishing, spotting, and handling over decades. So when a high-grade error coin surfaces, it becomes priceless. And this is why the 1975 penny, through a combination of double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, repunched mintmarks, die cracks, and other spectacular blunders, has achieved a reputation worth $5 million. Because such a piece is not only incredibly rare but also uniquely desirable, attracting collectors who want the crown jewel of their collection, and wealthy investors who see coins like this as secure tangible assets. And beyond the technical side of errors and grades, we must consider the stories that make the 1975 penny so magical, stories of ordinary people finding rare coins and pocket change. Stories of treasure hunters scouring jars of pennies or bank rolls only to discover something worth more than a mansion. Stories of how history itself is preserved in a tiny copper disc, because the penny features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a symbol of American heritage, paired with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, making every error on this coin not just a minting mistake but a distortion of American history itself, and that symbolism adds to the fascination, making collectors feel as though they are holding a tiny piece of history gone awry, a glitch in the timeline. And what elevates this story further is how coins like the 1975 penny represent the randomness of luck, the chance that a single person could unknowingly possess a life-changing fortune in their pocket change. Because most people dismiss pennies as insignificant, yet in rare cases, those pennies can be worth millions. And it is this juxtaposition between the ordinary and the extraordinary that makes coin collecting so captivating. And in the case of the 1975 penny, the fascination grows with each layer of rarity, because while billions were minted, only a handful carry the spectacular errors and qualities that make them worth $5 million, and of that handful, perhaps only one or two examples exist in pristine, high-grade condition with multiple dramatic errors, which is why the coin is considered priceless and legendary, and so collectors dream of finding one, scouring through rolls, estate sales, old jars, and inherited collections, because the possibility that such a treasure lies hidden is what drives the thrill of the hunt. And even if most will never find it, the dream alone inspires passion, and that passion is why the coin market thrives, with auctions where such treasures sell for record-breaking sums, with collectors bidding furiously to own a piece of history. And when a 1975 penny with spectacular errors surfaces, the excitement ripples across the community. News outlets cover it, prices climb, and the legend grows, and this cycle of rarity, discovery, and fascination is what makes the 1975 penny not just a coin, but a story, a legend, and a symbol of how even the smallest things can hold unimaginable value. And so when we think about why this coin costs $5 million, we must remember it's not just about the errors themselves, but about the uniqueness, the preservation, the symbolism, the rarity, and the passion of collectors who will pay anything to own what few others can. And that is why the 1975 penny remains one of the most valuable and desirable coins ever produced by mistake, a reminder that history, luck, and human error can combine to create treasures beyond imagination, and it inspires us to always look carefully at our change, to never dismiss the humble penny, because you never know when that small copper coin could be your gateway to a fortune. And that is why the story of the 1975 penny continues to resonate, captivating seasoned collectors and new enthusiasts alike, reminding us that treasure is often hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone observant enough, curious enough, and lucky enough to discover it. And so the legend lives on, as one of the rarest, most fascinating, and most valuable mistakes in all of numismatic history, the 1975 1 cent, a coin that proves beyond doubt that the smallest things can indeed hold the greatest value. And for those who dream of riches or who treasure history, this $5 million penny stands as the ultimate prize, the ultimate story, and the ultimate inspiration. Next, 1988 1 cent USA coin, another extraordinary exploration into the world of rare and valuable coins, where ordinary pieces of change that pass unnoticed through millions of hands suddenly become legends worth fortunes. And today we turn our attention to the 1988 USA 1 cent coin. A humble penny struck in Philadelphia that under normal circumstances would carry a face value so small that most people wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the ground, yet due to extraordinary mistakes, minting errors, die varieties, transitional anomalies, and extremely rare circumstances, this coin has been valued at a staggering $4 million, And it is stories like these that remind us why coin collecting is one of the most thrilling treasure hunts in existence. Because the 1988 penny is not just copper-plated zinc, it is a piece of history, a one-of-a-kind accident. A symbol of human imperfection transformed into a priceless artifact, and for collectors, investors, and dreamers alike, the thought that a simple penny could hold the power to change a life is enough to spark an undying fascination. And today we will peel back every layer of what makes the 1988 penny so valuable, why it commands multimillion-dollar bids at auctions, and what kinds of errors and mistakes turn it from an everyday coin into an object of desire sought after across the globe. And to understand this, we must begin with the backdrop of 1988 itself, a year when the United States Mint was producing pennies with a composition of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating, a drastic change from the pre-1982 mostly copper cents, and this transition in materials created opportunities for mistakes. Because not all blanks and planchets were properly handled, some leftover copper planchets from prior years accidentally fed into presses, and in rare cases, 1988 pennies exist that were struck on bronze planchets that should have been long retired, instantly making them transitional errors of immense value. And when authenticated by grading companies, such coins are not only historically fascinating but financially explosive, fetching millions due to their extreme rarity. But that is only the beginning, because 1988 also became legendary for its die varieties, most famously the 1988 reverse of 1989 penny, an anomaly where a die intended for 1989 pennies was mistakenly used on some 1988 coins, creating subtle differences in the design of the Lincoln Memorial reverse, particularly in the shape of the designer's initials FG near the memorial, and collectors immediately recognize this as a major variety, because transitional designs are among the most sought-after types of errors in numismatics, bridging the gap between two eras and existing only in tiny numbers. And for the 1988 penny, this reverse of 1989 variety is a crown jewel, especially when found in high grade with full red luster, because only a handful survive in pristine condition. And then we must consider double die errors, which occur when the hub strikes the die more than once out of alignment, causing letters, dates, and images to appear doubled. And in 1988, double die obverse examples have been documented where the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust," shows dramatic doubling, instantly attracting collectors who value bold visible mistakes. Because the visual uniqueness of such doubling is a numismatic wonder, and when combined with the already rare transitional reverse, the coin becomes a one-of-a-kind specimen worth millions. And then we add repunched mintmarks into the mix, because in the 1980s the mintmark punching process still produced variations where the P, D, or S was accidentally stamped multiple times, leaving behind shadows or overlapping impressions that collectors prize as varieties. And when an RPM exists on a 1988 penny in pristine condition, especially combined with other anomalies, its value skyrockets, and we cannot overlook off-center strikes, broad strikes, multiple strikes, or coins struck through grease, debris, or foreign objects, because each of these errors makes a coin unique, a singular piece unlike any other. And for the 1988 penny, examples with dramatic off-center strikes yet retaining a full visible date and mintmark are breathtaking rarities that can reach astronomical values. And when one of these surfaces at auction, it can ignite bidding wars that drive prices into the millions, because collectors know they may never see another one again. And then there is the factor of grade and preservation, because most pennies are circulated, scratched, tarnished, or worn down from decades of use. But if a 1988 penny with these rare errors is discovered in near-perfect condition, graded MS67 or MS68 read by PCGS or NGC, it becomes exponentially more valuable. Because copper-plated zinc coins are notorious for developing spots, corrosion, and unattractive toning, so finding one with blazing luster, sharp strike, and immaculate surfaces is like finding a diamond in a coal mine. And when that diamond also carries a transitional reverse, a double die, or an off-metal strike, the value leaps into the realm of millions. And that is exactly why certain 1988 pennies have been valued at $4 million, because they are not merely coins, they are miracles of survival, testaments to human error, and symbols of historical transition, and beyond the technical details, there is a story here that makes the 1988 penny legendary, because for the everyday person, the thought that a coin they might find in a pocket, in a jar of old change, or in a roll from the bank could secretly be worth more than a mansion is electrifying, and stories have surfaced of people discovering rare 1988 varieties by accident, turning what was thought to be 1 cent into life-changing money, and those stories fuel the legend. Because coin collecting thrives on hope, the hope that somewhere, hidden in plain sight, treasures await, and the 1988 penny embodies that dream more than most, because it is modern enough to still be in circulation, yet rare enough to be almost impossible to find, and this balance creates an allure that captivates new and seasoned collectors alike. And so when we talk about the 1988 penny being worth $4 million, we are talking about the culmination of multiple factors: the transitional reverse of 1989, variety, double die averse and reverse errors, wrong planchet strikes, repunched mintmarks, off-center and multiple strikes, struck through anomalies, die cracks and cuds, pristine preservation, and above all, the extreme rarity of any coin combining more than one of these features, because it is the combination of uniqueness, visual drama, and high grade that makes such a coin priceless. And in the case of the 1988 penny, the handful of surviving multimillion-dollar specimens represent the very peak of modern coin rarity, the type of coin that becomes a headline at major auctions, where collectors and investors battle to own a piece of history. And when such coins cross the auction block, the atmosphere is electric, because everyone knows they are witnessing numismatic history in the making, and beyond the auction halls, the cultural fascination grows, because mainstream media picks up the story, headlines scream about pennies worth millions, and ordinary people rush to check their change, fueling the imagination of millions and spreading the legend even further. And that is why the 1988 penny is not just a rare coin, it is a phenomenon, a living legend that continues to inspire and excite, because it represents the perfect storm of rarity, error, survival, and historical significance. And for collectors who dream of owning the ultimate treasure, the 1988 penny worth $4 million is a holy grail. A prize that validates a lifetime of searching, and for those who may never own one, the story itself is enough, because it proves that even the smallest, most overlooked objects in our lives can hold unimaginable secrets, and that sometimes, luck, history, and imperfection combine to create something truly priceless. And so the 1988 penny stands as a reminder that the world is full of hidden treasures, waiting to be discovered, waiting to change lives, waiting to tell their story, and this $4 million coin is a symbol of that eternal possibility, ensuring that its legend will endure for generations to come, whispered among collectors, celebrated in auction houses, and dreamed about by everyone who has ever held a penny and wondered, could this be the one? Next, 1988 D1 cent USA coin, this incredible journey through the world of coins, where the smallest and most ordinary objects can turn into treasures beyond imagination. And today we dive into the mystery and magic of the 1988 D USA 1 cent coin, a penny minted in Denver that under most circumstances would be seen as nothing more than pocket change. Something tossed into a jar or handed over at the counter without a second thought, yet because of extraordinary circumstances, minting mistakes, transitional varieties, die anomalies, and rare conditions of survival, this specific coin has reached a valuation of $3 million, and the story behind it is as thrilling as any treasure hunt, because the 1988 D penny proves once again that history, human error, and sheer luck can turn a coin that was supposed to be worth just a single cent into a life-changing fortune. And when we explore this coin, we are not just talking about metal and numbers, we are talking about a fascinating intersection of art, technology, and chance that keeps collectors and treasure hunters searching tirelessly, because every time you hold a penny from 1988, there is the remote but electrifying possibility that you might be holding one of the rarest and most valuable coins ever minted, a penny worth $3 million, and the story begins with the background of 1988 at the Denver Mint, when billions of pennies were being produced from copper-plated zinc planchets, following the composition change of 1982, with 97.5% zinc and just 2.5% copper plating, a shift that created all sorts of potential for unusual mistakes. And among these mistakes lies the foundation of the 1988 D-penny's immense value, because the Denver Mint, while precise and efficient, was not immune to errors, and some of these errors produced coins so rare that only a few survive, making them priceless today. And one of the most significant anomalies tied to the 1988 D-penny is the transitional reverse variety known as the reverse of 1989, where a die meant for the following year was mistakenly used in 1988 production, creating subtle yet distinctive differences in the design of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, particularly in the designer's initials FG near the memorial. And for collectors, this is an absolute treasure because transitional designs are some of the most sought-after anomalies in the hobby, bridging two production years and existing only in very small numbers. And when this rare reverse variety is combined with the Denver Mint mark, it becomes even more valuable, because most people overlook such subtle details, meaning very few examples have been preserved in pristine condition, and the value skyrockets when such a coin is discovered in mint state with blazing red luster, and beyond the transitional variety. We must also consider dramatic die errors that occurred in 1988, because double die obverse pennies exist where the inscriptions such as Liberty or In God We Trust appeared double due to multiple misaligned impressions when the die was being created, and such dramatic visual errors are among the most beloved by collectors, because they are immediately noticeable to the naked eye and create a sense of uniqueness. And when a 1988 D-penny with such doubling is found in perfect preservation, it instantly becomes a multimillion-dollar rarity. And then there are repunched mintmarks, known as RPMs, where the D mintmark was punched more than once into the die by hand, leaving behind doubling, shadowing, or distorted impressions, each variety unique in its own right, and collectors hunt these obsessively, because they represent the human side of minting, the tiny mistakes made by workers that survive forever on coins, and when coupled with the transitional reverse or other dramatic die variety, the rarity multiplies. And then we must not overlook planchet errors, because in the mid to late 1980s, the shift from copper to zinc occasionally led to mistakes where leftover copper planchets or foreign blanks were fed into the presses, producing off-metal strikes that should not exist, and a 1988 D-penny struck on a bronze planchet or even on a foreign coin blank is a dream find, instantly turning what should be an ordinary cent into a multimillion-dollar treasure, and dramatic striking errors add yet another dimension to the story. Because off-center strikes where the design is missing on one side and blank metal fills the rest are highly collectible, especially if the date and mintmark remain intact, and when such off-center coins survive in uncirculated condition, they become one-of-a-kind artifacts. And similar is true for broad strikes, multiple strikes, die caps, and struck through errors where grease, debris, or even foreign objects became lodged between the die and planchet during striking, creating ghostly or bizarre impressions that no other coin shares. And when such errors are documented on a 1988 D-penny, their rarity makes them extremely valuable. And then comes the factor of grade and preservation, because most 1988 D-pennies circulated heavily, suffering scratches, wear, corrosion, and discoloration over decades of use, and the copper plating on zinc cents is especially prone to bubbling, spotting, or peeling, making pristine high-grade examples nearly impossible to find. And so when a rare variety or dramatic era 1988 D-penny is discovered in MS-67 or MS-68 red condition certified by grading services like PCGS or NGC, the value explodes into the multimillion-dollar range, because collectors know such perfection is extraordinarily rare. And this is why the 1988 D-penny, with the right combination of errors, varieties, and high grade, has been valued at $3 million. Because it is not just the mistake itself that matters but the survival of that mistake in the best possible condition, and beyond the technicalities, the cultural fascination with this coin runs deep, because it embodies the dream of finding treasure in plain sight, the possibility that someone with a sharp eye could discover a life-changing fortune in their pocket change, because unlike older rarities locked away in collections, the 1988 D-penny is modern enough that examples might still circulate unnoticed, waiting for discovery. And stories of people finding rare 1988 varieties in bank rolls or inherited jars of coins fuel the imagination, inspiring collectors and newcomers alike to check every penny closely. And this thrill of the hunt is part of what drives the value, because demand for such coins grows as more people learn about their existence, and auctions become arenas of competition where the wealthiest collectors bid furiously to own one of the few surviving examples, knowing they may never see another in their lifetime. And when one of these pennies sells for millions, the story spreads to newspapers, television, and social media, inspiring countless others to check their change. And this cycle of discovery, excitement, and publicity only cements the legend of the 1988 penny further, and it is this legend that ensures its continued place as one of the most famous and valuable modern American coins, because at its heart, the story of the 1988 penny is not just about metal and mistakes, it is about possibility. The possibility that in the most ordinary of places lies extraordinary value, that in a handful of change could rest a fortune, and that a coin meant to be forgotten could instead become a priceless symbol of luck, history, and human imperfection. And this is why the 1988 penny valued at $3 million continues to captivate the imagination, reminding us all that sometimes the smallest things can hold the greatest treasures. And so the legend endures, passed among collectors, celebrated at auctions, and dreamed about by everyone who has ever held a penny and wondered if it might be the one, because this coin, with its unique blend of errors, varieties, preservation, and history, stands as one of the greatest treasures of modern numismatics, a $3 million masterpiece born from mistakes, and a reminder that treasure truly can be hiding in plain sight. Last 1964 1-cent USA coin. Our journey takes us into the heart of one of the most fascinating stories in American numismatics, the tale of the 1964 USA 1-cent coin, a coin that under normal circumstances would have been seen as just another penny minted in Denver, passed from hand to hand without a thought, tucked away in jars, left in drawers, or even lost in the cracks of couches. But because of rare mistakes, unusual minting anomalies, transitional errors, dramatic die varieties, and the sheer chance of survival in pristine condition, this penny has reached a mind-blowing valuation of $7 million. And the legend of the 1964 penny is not just about its monetary worth, it is about the incredible combination of history, luck, human error, and rarity that transformed one of the most common coins into a symbol of unimaginable treasure. Because to understand why a coin worth just 1 cent on its face is now valued in the millions, we must look deep into the year 1964. The circumstances of its minting, and the errors that set it apart from all others. And so let's dive into this story that blends mystery, history, and the eternal thrill of treasure hunting, because the 1964 penny is not only rare, it is iconic, and it continues to captivate the imagination of collectors and treasure seekers alike. In 1964, the United States Mint was under pressure to produce massive amounts of coinage to meet the growing demands of the booming American economy, and the Denver Mint struck billions of Lincoln cents that year, all composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, the classic bronze composition that had defined the penny for decades. But when production numbers reach into the billions, even the smallest mistakes can slip through, and when those mistakes create something unique, something never meant to exist, the resulting coins can become priceless. And this is precisely what happened with the 1964 penny, because while the vast majority were ordinary, a tiny handful emerged with errors so significant that they instantly stood apart, and over time, their rarity, combined with their condition and the feverish demand among collectors, pushed their value into the millions. One of the most significant error types associated with the 1964 penny is the double die obverse, where inscriptions like, "In God We Trust, Liberty," or even the date itself appear doubled due to misalignment during the die creation process, and these doubled letters and numbers create a striking visual effect that collectors find irresistible, because they not only stand as evidence of minting mistakes but also make the coin visually unique, and dramatic double dies from other years, like 1955 and 1969's, have already proven how valuable such errors can be. So when a bold double die is discovered on a 1964 penny, Especially in pristine uncirculated condition, its value skyrockets. And if that coin also carries other anomalies, it moves into the realm of multimillion-dollar treasures. Then we must consider off-center strikes, where the design was not properly centered in the striking chamber, causing part of the coin's design to be missing and leaving a large blank area. And while most off-center coins are common, those that retain the full date and mintmark alongside a dramatic misalignment are highly collectible. And when such a rare error occurs on a 1964 D penny in immaculate preservation, it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, adding layers of rarity and pushing the value higher still. And collectors are always willing to pay premiums for coins that combine dramatic errors with visible dates and mintmarks, because such coins are not only rare but also visually stunning, serving as conversation pieces that stand out in any collection. Another fascinating error connected to the 1964 D penny involves transitional planchets, because in the mid-1960s, the mint was experimenting with compositions and minting processes due to looming changes in coinage, especially with the removal of silver from dimes and quarters in 1965, and occasionally wrong planchets or leftover blanks from prior years slipped into production, creating coins that should not exist. So when a 1964 D penny is found struck on a foreign planchet, a dime planchet, or even an off-metal blank, it becomes a jaw-dropping rarity, instantly transforming into a multimillion-dollar coin, because such mistakes were accidental, incredibly rare, and each surviving example is essentially unique, making it a treasure that serious collectors are willing to fight for in high-stakes auctions. Repunched mintmarks, or RPMs, are yet another type of error that adds intrigue to the 1964 D penny, because at that time, mintmarks were still punched by hand into the dies, and this manual process often led to doubling, tripling, or distorted impressions of the D, and each variation is unique, creating micro-rarities that collectors chase obsessively. And while most RPMs are affordable, rare and dramatic examples, especially those combined with other errors, can be valued extremely highly, and when preserved in mint state condition, they become showpieces in advanced collections, pushing the price ever closer to the multimillion-dollar mark. Struck-through errors also contribute to the value of the 1964 D penny, because when grease, cloth fibers, wire, or other debris became lodged between the die and planchet during striking, the resulting coins carried ghostly impressions, distortions, or missing details that make them unique. And in the case of the 1964 D penny, dramatic struck-through errors have been documented where parts of Lincoln's portrait or the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse are partially obscured, creating a bizarre but fascinating design. And such coins are cherished by collectors because they literally capture a moment of accident frozen in time at the mint. Die cracks, die breaks, and die cuts are further errors that collectors love, because they represent the wear and tear of overused dies during high production years, and when cracks run across the coin, sometimes resembling lightning bolts or forming dramatic shapes, they make each coin unique, and large cuts, or missing portions of the design caused by broken dies, are particularly dramatic, turning ordinary pennies into valuable one-of-a-kind collectibles. And when such a cut appears on a 1964 D penny, the coin instantly becomes legendary. But beyond the errors themselves, preservation is critical, because most 1964 D pennies were heavily circulated, showing scratches, tarnish, discoloration, and wear from decades of use, and finding an example with full red luster, sharp details, and a grade of MS67 or MS68 is almost impossible, making such coins extraordinarily valuable. And when a rare era coin from this year also survives in high-grade condition, it creates the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and desirability that drives its value into the $7 million range, because wealthy collectors know that such a coin is not just rare, it is nearly irreplaceable, a true crown jewel for any collection. And this is what makes the 1964 D penny so captivating, because it represents not just metal and numbers but a story of a time when the mint was under immense pressure, when billions of coins were produced but only a handful emerged with unique mistakes, when history was shifting as America prepared to change its coinage system, and when accidents, luck, and circumstance combined to create treasures that should not exist, And this story resonates with collectors and non-collectors alike, because it embodies the dream of treasure hunting, the possibility that something so small, so ordinary, could secretly hold unimaginable value. And that dream is why the 1964 D penny has achieved mythical status, becoming not just a coin but a legend. At auctions, when one of these rare 1964 D pennies surfaces, the atmosphere is electric, with collectors and investors bidding furiously, knowing that they are fighting for a piece of history, a piece of luck, and a piece of treasure. And when the hammer falls at millions of dollars, headlines are made, news outlets cover the story, and ordinary people across the world rush to check their change jars and old collections, dreaming of discovering their own fortune. And this cycle of discovery, publicity, and fascination keeps the legend alive, ensuring that the 1964 D penny remains one of the most famous and desirable coins in modern numismatics. And so the 1964 D penny, valued at $7 million, is not just about rarity or error, it is about possibility. The possibility that in the most overlooked of places lies unimaginable value, that in the palm of your hand could rest a life-changing treasure. And that mistakes, accidents, and chance can sometimes create things far more valuable than perfection ever could. And it is this truth that makes the 1964 D penny legendary, a coin that proves that even the smallest, most ordinary objects can hold the greatest secrets, the greatest stories, and the greatest fortunes, and it stands today as one of the most extraordinary coins in history, a true symbol of treasure hidden in plain sight, waiting for the observant, the curious, and the lucky to discover.